Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whenever you're listening in. This is your sales enabler, Sundar Nathan. The agenda for today is that we will cover the evolution in business-to-business sales. We'll talk about the 7 customer stakeholders that you're going to come across during your sales journey, as well as the 5 different types of sales rep profiles. Among the 5 rep profiles, we'll see why the insightful seller is the most successful in today's B2B selling environment. We'll also discuss teaching, tailoring, and taking control. Why the insightful seller is able to succeed by teaching for differentiation, by tailoring to the particular buyer persona that they're talking to, including the particular domain, the industry, the business challenges, and the role of the buyer. We'll see how they succeed by asserting control throughout the buying cycle. Finally, we'll go through what is a commercial insight. How do you bring value to the conversation as you discuss commercial insights with the customer? Why you need to reframe the customer thinking. B2B selling has changed dramatically in the last decade. Since 2009-2010, with the fall of Lehman Brothers, Bear Stearns, and the financial crisis, buying behavior changed overnight. Despite this, sales teams that we met with were able to exceed their quotas, achieve their numbers, and reach success. There was a particular sales profile that exceeded expectations even in the depths of the financial crisis. We'll talk about this profile in this section. Okay, let's talk about sales strategy evolution over time. We're going to discuss here the nature of the sales conversation in each of the 3 eras: product selling era, the solution selling era, and the insight selling era. We'll talk about the ideal sales rep profile for each of these eras. Who were the key stakeholders that they engaged, and when they engaged, as well as the flow of information. Okay, let's talk about the product selling era. What is the nature of the sales conversation when it comes to product selling? Listen, we all have been there. We used to lead with features and benefits, right? We wanted to explain the features, the functionality, and demo the great capabilities to the buyer and get them excited about what they were purchasing. Now, the ideal sales rep profile for a product selling environment is a features expert, somebody who's almost a systems engineer. The key decision maker that they were trying to reach out to was the person who was capable of buying. Remember BANT, budget, authority, needs, timeline? We always wanted to figure out who had the budget and get to that person. We wanted to get to that person when the customer was already assessing the options, when they already had an RFP out, and we wanted to convince them that our product was the best product. The flow of information was that the customer actually placed the order with us after seeing the demo. So that was the product selling era, and it extended well into the 1980s. Okay, on to solution selling. How many of you have been through solution selling training? I know I went through the 9 boxes of Bosworth. What were we taught to do? We were taught to lead with questions, right? Open-ended questions, lots of questions. Some of the questions could be, Mr. Customer, what keeps you up at night? What are your key business challenges and initiatives? What are the problems that you're facing today with your business? The ideal sales rep profile for the solution selling era is somebody who could ask lots of questions, somebody who was an interrogator, somebody who could peel the onion. We were taught by solution selling to look for coaches or advocates within the customer's business. These advocates would help us get the deal done. We approach the customer when the customer already understands that there is a need, when there is a pain already, and the customer really coaches us on how they will purchase. They're telling us what their purchasing process is, who the stakeholders are, and who we need to convince to get the deal done. This lasted well into 2009. How many of you have read the book, The Challenger Sale? The Challenger Sale really talks about insightful selling. Today we're in the era of insightful selling, where the nature of the sales conversation is that you've got to lead with insight. You have to be able to mobilize key stakeholders within the customer to get the deal done. And we'll talk a little bit later about who these mobilizers are. We have to be able to engage when the customer is learning and where the customer is learning. The customer is out there on the internet talking to analysts, talking to their peers, and we actually have to find them while they're in the process of learning itself. And finally, in terms of the flow of information, this may sound counterintuitive, but we actually have to coach the customer on how they'll purchase. This is called commercial coaching, and we are in the era of insightful selling today. Okay, let's look at the customer purchase decision timeline. Back in the product selling era, we reached out to the customer when they were ready to buy, when they had a specific pain. And we reached out to them, gave them a demo, and asked them to sign on the dotted line. That world is gone. The stunning thing is that the research shows that almost 57% of the buyer's journey is complete today by the time they reach out to a vendor. So the customer's due diligence begins well in advance of them reaching out to us. And during this period, what is the customer doing? They actually are scoping out their needs in detail. They're setting their priorities, they're defining the key requirements, and they're starting to compare solutions. They go to the websites of various vendors, including ours. They're doing the research, talking to the analysts, and finally, even discussing price. By the time they get to us, they've done a huge amount of research. How customers buy today has changed dramatically. Back in the day of product selling, if you could convince the buyer, the decision maker, that's all you needed to do. Today we see in complex B2B sales that there are multiple decision makers and stakeholders involved in making a decision. You have to get organizational consensus to actually get the deal done. In the past, a single stakeholder could agree with you on the vision, move from their status quo towards the desired change. In order to get a customer to move from the status quo today, with insightful selling, we actually have to teach them something of value about their business that they didn't know already, about a business challenge or problem that they don't see coming yet. And this is something that we can easily do. We need to help the customers recognize a previously unrealized need. At Fortinet, we can tell them through a CTAP or a diagnosis about challenges and problems that they haven't encountered yet or haven't seen coming. We need to reframe how the customers value our solution. It needs to be tied to our unique differentiators. For example, the Advanced Threat Protection Framework. In terms of getting agreement on a vision, compared to product sales or solution selling, the need is even greater today to get organizational consensus. It's very, very important to help the customer build the consensus within their organization, to drive an agenda of change. We need to give them and build their confidence in their ability to take action and to move from the status quo. For a lot of organizations, moving from the status quo is seen as expensive, risky, and moving into the unknown. One of the key things is we sell to or lead to the ability as the only supplier to actually support the change that they're looking for. We need to take control of the sale, but at the same time, we need to support the customer. This is how we get them to the purchasing decision. So why do customers buy in the B2B world, and why do they stay loyal? Let's look at some numbers. The corporate executive board, the guys who wrote the Challenger sale, did research with a few hundred companies. And here on this graph we see on the y-axis is the percentage of contribution to customer loyalty, why they stayed loyal. And on the x-axis, we have 4 different areas or reasons why. For example, company and brand impact, product and service delivery, price or value to price ratio, and finally, the sales experience itself. And the numbers were surprising. CEB found that only 19% of the reason why companies stay loyal to a particular supplier is due to the brand impact and the company name. Only 19% of their loyalty was due to the actual product, the quality of the product, and the service delivery. I would have thought it would be much more than that. And finally, price, which is what we think is so important, but price contributed only 9% to loyalty. A staggering 53% of the reason why customers stay loyal to a particular supplier is because of the sales or buying experience itself. Some of the reasons they pointed out about a particular supplier were things like This rep is able to give me a very unique, valuable perspective on the market. They're helping me navigate the different alternatives that are out there. They know enough about the competition that they're able to advise me. They'll help me avoid potential landmines. They're also able to educate me on new issues and outcomes. This is something that we can do very comfortably at Fortinet. They're able to buy from and they have widespread support throughout my organization. So think about this. 53% of the reason why customers buy in the new B2B buying and selling era is related to the buying experience itself. Okay, let's shift gears and talk about the 7 different kinds of customer stakeholders that you're going to come across in the new era. Who are these people, and who are the mobilizers among them, the folks that can help you get the deal done? We also have blockers and talkers. All right, let's get into it. The 7 types of customer stakeholders are the go-getter, the skeptic, the friend, the teacher, the guide, the climber, and finally, the blocker. We'll see what their strengths and weaknesses are of each of these profiles, and we'll start to get into how you can influence them to get the deal done, who you should stay away from, and who you should work with. All right, the first type of customer stakeholders you're going to come across in your deals is the go-getter. This is the rising star in the customer's organization, right? This is the person who says, show us the business value and we'll get the deal done. What are their strengths? They're really a team player. If you notice from their conversations, they always say, we need to work together, our organization needs these, etc. They're relentless, they work really hard, and they create structure where there is no structure. But their weaknesses are they're less visionary. They value a rational versus an emotional explanation, but they themselves are poor storytellers. So what we really need to do is give them the stories they need to succeed, give them the vision, and ensure that they're going to convey that vision. And with them, we always prioritize the organizational benefit. What's in it for their organization? Okay, the next type of customer is the teacher. We've all met this person, right? This is the person who does blue ocean strategy in companies. They're a great visionary. They're a great storyteller. Frequently, you'll find the teacher and the achiever working together in the same team because they complement each other so well. What are their strengths? They're very persuasive. They can advise others and be very passionate once they adopt your vision and your passion. What are their deficiencies, though? They can be seen as ungrounded a little. They're weak in project management, and they manage primarily through excitement. So how do you engage with them? What do you do? What you need to do is stick with their vision and only tweak as needed, but provide a clear project plan to them and timelines. Keep them on track with interim deadlines. Make sure that you've defined the buying process for them on the basis of successful buying processes with which you've engaged with other clients. They're going to carry your vision and your passion to the rest of their organization because they're fantastic storytellers. Okay, this next profile, I really like this person. They're the skeptic. They'll tell you, hey, I know how to get things done, but you've got a lot to prove. They're going to ask you lots of questions. They're going to debate you on the merits and the points that you bring up. But the buy-in of this person means that the entire organization will listen. They can actually force a change or move towards action. One of the challenges that the skeptic has is that they really struggle with ambiguity and they move very, very cautiously. So what you've got to do is really drive urgency. You've got to provide great certainty at various steps of your project plan. Give them a compelling story to share. Make them your evangelist and you're going to win the deal. I love working with skeptics because I love debating them, and that's what the insightful seller does. Okay, the next customer stakeholder is the guide. Who is this person? We've all come across this person in customer organizations. They know the organization really well. They can be really helpful. They give you the inside scoop sometimes. You know all that information that can really help you navigate the organization. Here's a problem. They're likely helping other vendors with the same information. This is a person who comes across as very candid, but all they're really doing is sharing information and trying to elevate themselves in the conversation. They really can't help you get the deal done because they're not action-oriented. They are great talkers. What you want to do is pull as much information from them as possible. They have less influence, so what you want to do is maintain a connection but don't rely on them to get the deal done. The next customer stakeholder is the friend. All right, this is the person who always takes your meetings, right? You know about this person's family even. You hang out, you go out to lunch, you share information, but this person rarely buys. They take your call, but their help isn't always valuable, okay? It's possible that the friend is also helping other vendors. What you want to do is don't get too comfortable. Don't get single-threaded with this person. They can become a real time sink, a red herring. What you want to do is evaluate if the information that they're giving you is accurate, if it's useful, maintain a connection with them, but be sure that they are not the mobilizer who will help you get the deal done. The next one is the climber. This person is very ambitious, very driven. The challenge is that they are distrusted by others in the organization because they're seen as selfish. They back out at the first sign of risk to themselves. They really can't help you get the deal done. So what you need to do is focus on a personal win for them if you can get information from them, if you think you need them. But be careful because their help can backfire if you're linked to a person who's not really trusted within the organization and is seen as a climber. So we've seen 6 different types of customer stakeholders, right? The go-getter, the teacher, the skeptic, the friend, the guide, and the climber. The go-getter, the teacher, and the skeptic fall into a category that the corporate executive board, the guys who wrote Challenger, they call these people mobilizers. The other 3, the friend, the guide, and the climber, are called talkers. And guess what? Research shows that the salespeople accomplishing their quota, hitting their number, helping their organization succeed in today's B2B environment, the insightful sellers, focus their attention on the mobilizers, on the go-getter, on the teacher, and the skeptic. It's interesting, but who they call co-performers, the people that are not hitting their number, the sales reps that are not able to achieve quota, are actually focusing their time and energy on the friend, the guide, and the climber. I know what you're thinking. You said there are 7 different customer stakeholders. Where's the 7th? Okay, the 7th is the blocker, okay? This is the Palo Alto bigot. This is the checkpoint architect. This is the person within the company who brought in Cisco. They're definitely going to block anything that we say or do, and we call them the blocker. So in this new era of insightful selling, what we want to do is focus our efforts on the go-getter, the teacher, and the skeptic. We want to avoid the friend, the guide, and the climber. These categories are not going to fall neatly into human beings, right? We all know we're not going to find perfect go-getters or perfect guides. But this is a guideline to help you understand the types of folks that you want to be working with. All right. Who can get the deal done with you? These are the mobilizers. We talked about this a little bit. The go-getter, the teacher, and the skeptic are mobilizers. But how do you identify a mobilizer? The first thing you look for is whether they express healthy skepticism. So this is a little bit of an eye chart here. But on the left, you see, if a customer actually challenges you, they want you to challenge them, that's a good thing. If they ask difficult questions and push back on new ideas, that's a good thing. On top of this, if they are interested in the greater good, in other words, they want the organization to succeed, their motivation is to really improve the business and not a personal agenda, then you know that they're a mobilizer. A key tell here is they'll talk about their organization, their team, as we, much more than about themselves and about their problems. The third component that you look for is how they communicate. Once they have healthy skepticism, once they're interested in the greater good, then what you want to figure out is how they communicate. Now, if their communication style is about facts and tasks, then you're talking to go-getters or skeptics. If they talk in stories, if they share opinions, ideas, vision, that's a teacher. The teacher is the profile that typically would be entrusted in an organization with blue water strategy, right? Corporate vision, etc. Now, if they don't express healthy skepticism at the bottom here, if they still share useful information, then what you want to do is gather that information from them, even though they're talkers, even though they're friends or guides or climbers. And the key tell here is that they talk about their organization and the team far less. And that's the key. And finally, of course, you have the blockers. A blocker is somebody who is really hesitant to make any type of change, who rarely helps vendors, who believes in stability for its own sake. We've all come across these people. Okay, switching over to sales rep profiles. The corporate executive board looked at potential drivers of high performance, and they went out and surveyed hundreds of companies to figure out if their sales teams had certain attributes or not. They specifically looked at attitudes, skills, activities, and knowledge. When it came to attitudes, they looked at whether the sales rep had a goal motivation, whether they were outcome focused, whether they had a desire to seek an issue resolution, and whether they were willing to risk approval. When it came to skills, for example, they were looking for use of internal resources, negotiation skills, solution selling skills, teamwork, or business acumen. And when it came to activities, they looked at level of preparation, lead generation, how the sales rep evaluated opportunities, their level of industry knowledge or product knowledge. What they did was they looked at these attributes and saw how these attributes fell into the different sales rep profiles that emerged from the study. So in the Challenger study, what they found is that there were 5 distinct sales rep profiles. These profiles are the hard worker, the relationship builder, the problem solver, the lone wolf, and the insightful seller. Now the hard worker, and this was about 21% of the sample, now this is a person who's always willing to go the extra mile, is self-motivated, doesn't give up, is really interested in feedback and development. The relationship builder builds strong advocates inside a customer organization. In the solution selling world, sales managers were told to hire lots of these people. They were very generous in giving their time to help others, and relationship builders gets along with everyone. The third profile is the problem solver. Now this is really more of a sales engineer or systems engineer profile. This is about 14% of the sample. And what they were great at solving problems to ensure that all the customer issues and questions were answered. They're very detail oriented, and they really respond reliably to internal and external stakeholders. And the fourth profile is the lone wolf. This was about 18% of the sample. And what you find is that this is the person in sales organizations that follows their own instincts. You know, they make up their own marketing materials. Marketing doesn't really like that. But they go in and they pitch the customer the way they like to. They don't necessarily follow all the processes that are recommended within the sales organization. It's very hard to scale a sales organization around a lone wolf. And finally, we have the insightful seller or the challenger. Now, this is the person who has a different view of the world. They love to debate the customer. They love to understand the customer's business and push the customer. They're comfortable discussing money. Now, I'm not saying that we all fall into one of these profiles. What I'm saying is these are all minors. We need to have expertise in all these areas. We need to be hard workers. We need to be relationship builders. We need to solve problems. But we also need to be able to push the customer, be comfortable discussing money, move the customer from the status quo by challenging their perspective. Here's a comparison of how low performers and high performing reps worked with mobilizers. Now what you find is that lower performing reps really try to understand what each individual is looking to achieve. They're not thinking about the 5.4 people that it takes to really come to a solution decision within companies in the new B2B selling world. They try to learn the stakeholders' relationship to each other, and they try to determine make or break criteria for getting the deal done. The challenge here is that the customer is coaching the rep. They're trying to figure out how to navigate the organization, how to navigate the purchasing decision and the process. On the other side, you have the challenger, the insightful seller, is really trying to arm the customer to convey the message that is going to help them succeed. They help the buyer negotiate requirements. They're very comfortable pushing and debating the customer. And so they see their job as really coaching the customer, not the other way around. And that's the distinctive behavior of the high-performing sales role in today's B2B world. The challenger fingerprint. How is the challenger different from the relationship builder? The challenger teaches, tailors, and takes control. They are able to offer a unique perspective to the customer. They have excellent two-way communication skills. They know the customer value drivers, and they can actually identify the economic drivers for both the role of the customer that they're selling to as well as the organization of that customer. So they're able to really tailor the conversation to the value drivers. And finally, they're comfortable discussing money, and they can pressure the customer to move to the next step. This is about taking control. And all of these 6 different ways help them build constructive tension with the customer. They're willing to risk disapproval, in other words. Now, the relationship builder, on the other hand, forms great relationships, builds customer advocates, and builds cross-functional relationships within teams. So they really get along with others. But they're not really teaching the customer anything of commercial value. What gets the customer to take action is really value that is added during the sales cycle, as we saw earlier. Now, the relationship builder is also likable. They're genuine. They can work with anyone. They're generous with their time. All this results in actually reducing the customer tension. By reducing the customer tension, they're actually not helping getting the deal done. Okay, what does the insightful seller do differently? They teach, they tailor, and they assert control. When they teach, it's commercial teaching. It's not just teaching about a company's products or solutions, but they really try to reframe the way that a customer views their own business and their own needs. That's the only way to get a customer to move from a status quo to making a change, to moving towards Fortinet. The second piece we have to be able to do is tailor, not just to the person's role, their KPIs or key performance indicators, their domain, their industry, and their particular business challenge, but also link it back to Fortinet's unique differentiators to overcome their barriers for purchase. So this is a really important point. It's not just tailoring your message to a customer's role, whether there's a CISO or a CIO or a Chief Information Security Architect, but also to their particular business challenge and link it back to what Fortinet does differently that no one else is able to do. And finally, taking control. Taking control is about openly pursuing your goals as an account executive, but not doing it in an abusive or aggressive way. What you want to do is make sure that the customer is held accountable. For example, early in the sales cycle, you might share, Mr. Customer, can you please tell me what your criteria are, your objective criteria for making this decision? Or you might say, we're happy to do a detailed demo for you with our systems engineers. But in return, what we ask for is that you bring the following stakeholders to the table. Remember, we're in a 5.4 stakeholders world today. B2B complex sales on average have 5.4 people involved. So if you don't assert control, you're not going to get the deal done. You've got to go out, reach the mobilizers, and once you reach them, you need to teach, tailor, and assert control.